I'd like to talk for a minute about the esoteric take on masking, the kind of esoteric understanding of masking as it pertains to everything, um, to culture today, uh, to the current state of things, generally speaking. Why masking? Why is it going on right now? Now, if you believe that everything is just random and there's no deeper significance to the things that you see going on in the world, and that there's no symbolism to the things that you see going on in the world, then I suppose this message is not for you. But if you're someone who sees reality in the similar way that you would see literature, in that you could say, in fact, that history is the greatest literature of all because it's literature written by God, right? It's what's actually happening. The human writer uses his God-given talent to create a story, but the story that's being told, the story that continues to be told, that is history, that's the greatest story because it's being written by the greatest author. Therefore, there are all the things that you find in great literature. There's foreshadowing, there's irony, there's humor, there's pathos, and there's symbolism. Okay? So, according to the powers that be, according to the CD of C, masking is supposed to protect us. And then, of course, they say it's not to protect you, it's to protect others. But then, if you're protecting others, then if others having this barrier over their face protects you, then but you having the barrier over your face doesn't protect you, then how do you figure this protection thing is supposed to work? Anyway, no, I don't buy into any of that nonsense. Of course, as should be clear by anyone who knows me and anyone who's followed this channel or my writing or anything that I do or say. I'm a big time opponent of all of the. I was against all of this nonsense from the very beginning. I'm not boasting, but I think I'm maybe one of the few who can claim that. Since March of 2020, I always just thought, come on, what are you trying to pull? You really expect us all to fall for this nonsense? And of course, they did expect us all to fall for it. And of course, many people did and have fallen for this nonsense. But that's not what I want to talk about here for the next few minutes. Instead, I want to talk about what significance we can see, we can determine from masking. This unprecedented, period of time where all of a sudden it's just become normal to just be walking down the street and see somebody riding a bike, wearing a mask, wearing a surgical mask as they ride on by on their bike. People walking down the street, wearing masks. People walking in the mall, wearing masks. People everywhere. Of course, on jobs, of course, where it's mandatory, where they have to do it. But I've noticed even where I live, which is not the most certainly not the most liberal place in the world by a long shot. It's a fairly conservative place, and it's not a place where the lockdown lasted for very long. It really only lasted a couple of months, and then by May and into June, it was things pretty much returned to normal as far as places being open. Schools, it took a little longer for them to open, especially the public schools, and so forth. But anyway, my point is, even in the region of the country where I live, you see people just masking up voluntarily. It's just they just make it a part of their wardrobe, and it's like they almost, I've been to a nearby college campus and seen a bunch of college kids just walking around outside wearing masks, and it's like they've just been habituated to masking so much that they just forget that it's on. I guess it's like, you wear something for a little while and you eventually forget that you're wearing it. I guess that's how it works for them. That's never been how it has worked for me. When I've had a mask on, I've always been aching to take it off because I dislike wearing it, both because it is uncomfortable and makes breathing more difficult, but also because I feel it. I feel it's being something akin to having chains placed on me, and having to carry around my chains, having to like they make you do the perp walk when you're manacled, and you have to just walk. You have to just do this, where you can only take very, very small steps. That's how I feel when I'm wearing a mask. I feel like I look ridiculous. I feel like I look dumb. I feel like I look like a chump. But it's not just about how I feel like I look. It's also about how I know it makes me feel, and how the reason why it makes me feel the way it makes me feel is because of the signifier of masking. The signifier is we're going to keep this over you. We're going to block all your airways, and we're going to keep it there for as long as we want to, and it's for your own good. And if you don't do it, you're reprobate, and we're going to call down the wrath of the self-righteous mob against you. So I believe that, symbolically speaking, we are at a period now where a lot of truth has been let out. A lot more truth has been let out than say 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Thinking in terms of 9/11, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary, and I have been working on something that I intend to publish online called 19 Arabs with Box Cutters, which I'll be publishing in the next few days as the 20th anniversary of that event approaches. But thinking back to 20 years ago, there wasn't the same. There was far less truth that had been exposed, that had been revealed. There were things that people questioned. Of course, there was the Kennedy assassination. That was a huge event that caused people to question, the stories that were told, what we're supposed to believe about the people who claim to be our rightful rulers, and and there were a few other. There had been a few other things. There were issues that were brewing. There were people who talked about conspiracy theories and so forth. But being a conspiracy theorist, which of course, I'm sure you know, that phrase was invented by the CIA, try to make people sound silly or stupid. So even that that word is, or even that phrase is intended to be a mind fuck, in that it's intended to make you think a certain way, to think these people are peculiar or nutty or silly, and that you don't want to be like them because your social credit score will decrease if you become like them, or if you hang around them or are too tolerant of them, or whatever. But 20 years ago, it wasn't, and I've said this, made this point in a prior video. 20 years ago, it really wasn't that big a deal to be a conspiracy theorist. 20 plus years ago, I discussed. I don't know if this video is still up or if it was on my old channel, which has been deleted. But I discussed the 1997 film Conspiracy Theory starring Mel Gibson, and in that movie, the conspiracy theorist, the hero, who was a conspiracy theorist, turned out to be right about generally everything, and so it was acceptable at that time to have people the conspiracy theorist wasn't a bad person, or he was just sort of a quirky, offbeat kind of person, maybe a little tedious, maybe someone who just talks nonstop about the things that he believes, and maybe a little autistic, but he wasn't seen as a villain, he wasn't seen as a bad guy, he wasn't seen as someone who was problematic. He wasn't seen as racist and sexist or anything like that. Or they didn't try to pin all of these vices on him that you see them doing with conspiracy theorists, so-called, today. And the reason for that was they could be cooler about it back then because it wasn't really a threat to anybody or anything. People having greater knowledge, greater insight into what's really going on wasn't really that much of a threat. But over the last 20 years, I would say progressively, year by year, the more of the truth has become apparent to more people. And this, of course, culminated with the Trump phenomenon, where in that case you had this figure who, I don't know to what extent this was real, or to what extent it was just Trump himself being opportunistic and taking this all along, embracing all of these things himself. Trump became the sort of conspiracy theorist candidate, and he became, again for better or for worse. I think it's mostly probably a crock myself. I'm very dubious about the QAnon phenomenon, as I'm sure you know as well. But I don't think Trump was that interested in exposing the truth, but he convinced enough people that he was. And he would say things like, like say that Ted Cruz's father was one of the JFK assassins, or whatever, something like that, which may be true. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's kind of a wild thing to say in the midst of everything, and not something you typically would hear somebody, a major presidential candidate, say about one of his opponents, or one of his competitors. So, and he was on Alex Jones. Up to that point, Alex Jones wasn't really seen as that dangerous of a guy. He was just sort of this harmless nut. That was how people who knew about Alex Jones, that was generally how they how they talked about it. But the demonization of Alex Jones, the demonization of David Icke and similar figures, this all began when things started to really break down with Pizzagate. I would say Pizzagate really began the latest phase of this entire historical development that I'm talking about here. I think when that stuff got exposed, then the powers that be really went into panic mode, and they've been in panicked mode ever since. And so there's been this ratcheting up of hostilities, and there's has become this greater and greater tendency to scapegoat the to weaponize. I hate that word. I hate words like that, but that's the best way to put it, I think. To weaponize the media against conspiracy theorists to make them sound really evil and dangerous, as opposed to just nutty and quirky, but maybe well-meaning, like Mel Gibson's character in Conspiracy Theory. And so it all, it culminates with one event after another. One dubious-looking event that was probably astroturfed or carried out with crisis actors, or there's more to the story that they're not telling, like this mass shooting or that mass shooting, which has all of these weird inconsistencies about them. And I'm not going to go into any greater detail about any of those, but I think the kind of things that I'm talking about. With each progressive event like this, culminating in what began in March of 2020, this virus op that we're still in to some degree or extent, and now they're saying, they've been, or for the last few months, they've been, psychologically coercing people into thinking that it's virtuous to wear masks everywhere. And again, you see people doing it even here, even in my neck of the woods, where it's generally, this is not the liberal hotbed of the country, not by a long shot. It's not the kind of place where there's some very blue state mayor who just decides, or governor who just decides to use this occasion to become a petty tyrant and or worse, as we've seen happen in other places in the world, like I talked about, like Australia, where it's really bad right now. The extent of this authoritarian, tyrannical claque of people who have seized control and who are relentlessly pushing this whole operation. But anyway, I believe that if you look at it this way, if you look at history like it's a novel written by God, and God is the greatest author of all. He has written all of our lives, and He continues to write all of our lives. Which isn't to say He doesn't give us free will to do what we want, but in some sense He is in charge of everything that happens. So, from that perspective, given that we live at a time where we're at a certain kind of critical mass, where more and more people are seeing the truth of things, it thus becomes necessary to take more ever more strident, ever more tyrannical ever more brutal measures to and just ratchet up the entire culture of extreme incivility and hostility and so forth. To ratchet up all of those things, it becomes necessary to do that from the perspective of the powers that be, because they don't want these things exposed. And so, of course, they would be trying to make people cover their faces, because if you cover if covering your face is like hiding, and they want us to be hidden. They want the truth to be hidden from us, and they want to even block our airways, so we can't even breathe the truth. But an unmasked person, represents danger to them, because an unmasked person represents or symbolizes freedom, and somebody who's got no strings on him, and somebody who knows, I know what you did last summer, like that title goes. I know what you did in September of 2001. I know what you did in December of 2012. I know what you did in October of 2017 in Las Vegas, and on down the line. Well, they're trying to cover all that up now. They're becoming more and more panicked about seeing to it that these things get covered up. And so they want people to cover themselves up, because what is the human face to them? The human face represents the uncovered truth, and one who sees, and one who smells, and one who tastes, and one whose senses are open to the world, and who hasn't been horse-blinded, hasn't been muzzled. So, esoterically speaking, that's why we have the push for masks today. That's my opinion. Those are my thoughts on the subject. Let me know what you think, if you have any further thoughts, or if you think I'm off the mark about something or other. Please feel free to leave your thoughts below, provided that you are not rude or abusive or anything like that. I'm interested to hear from you. Thanks for watching. My name's Andy Nowicki. Please check out my work at altrightnovelist.com. Please check out my latest novel, The Insurrectionist, published by Terror House Press.